No, just very robotically. Please turn down your headphones. There is much rant, much yelling. We hope all of you got your copy either used or free from a library somewhere. It's really not worth the cost, or you can simply listen to the podcast and find out why.
Hey, thanks for joining the Escape With Me book club. Escape with me, Lizzie Sawyer.
And me, Sam Reiner.
Into our most recent read. Come with us as we evade reality and go into detail about a new book. We'll be discussing it from cover to cover, beginning to end, so remember, there will be spoilers.
For today's book, instead of giving a background on the book, I feel explanations are in order. We picked this book because we did a little market research and our target audience really liked mystery books and romance books. And so we decided the first 2 episodes were going to be a mystery and a romance. Well, at the time, neither of us really had an idea for what a romance should be. So instead, we went to the best-selling authors in the romance section of a used bookstore, and we searched through the books, and our first criteria was that there had to be 2 copies of the book, and the second had to be we could read the back of the cover and think, okay, this won't be so bad. And that is how we found this book, and misread the front of the cover. We thought it said it's a #1 New York Times bestseller. Come to find out, when we actually read the cover, it said #1 New York Times bestselling author, which should have been a sign.
But when 2 dyslexic people pick up the same book and misread the context of the same set of words.
And then on top of that, we read the back cover and thought, okay, this won't be so bad. Come to find out, the entire back cover is a lie.
Okay. The meat of the book isn't horrible. I didn't mind reading the meat of the book. It was the last 2 chapters that I was like, what happened? Where are we? How did we get here? Can we go back? We need to slow down.
First thing with the back of the book is it specifically paints it out to be that male lead, Landry Sutton, comes to this area where it just says Big Sky Country. I guess that's Montana's.
The town's called 3 Trees, isn't it?
Yeah, but it basically paints it out that Landry is coming to the ranch for the first time, and he has to decide whether he's going to stay or not. That is not the case at all.
No, he's been living there for ages.
He's lived there for over a year. That is not... Where is it? Landry intends to return to city life before the dust even settles on his boots. No, he's not.
He's been there for a year.
He signed up to be part of the rodeo.
You first meet him, he's riding on a horse and has been practicing doing it for the rodeo. That's not City Boy. City Boy would have been like, you want me to do what? Excuse you?
Landry's entire thing is wrong, and then Rhea's little portion, it focuses so much on the buffalo encounter in the front of the book that lasts for a couple pages. If it was an accurate back cover, it would be Rhea spends over 300 pages mourning her dead husband, and that is her only personality trait.
Oh, other than having to pull off the side of the roads from slightly inconvenient news.
There is so much crying in this book.
Oh no, my stepsister is coming to town. I must pull off to the side of the road.
And break down. I don't normally do this, except I'm going to do this all of the time in the book. If you spend so much time telling yourself, I'm not normally like this, you might be lying to yourself.
I think you're in denial, sweetheart. I think you need to go see a counselor. You may need some help. Of course, at the very end of the book, she definitely needs a counselor because she did not react to that in an appropriate manner. Makes me so mad.
Just a warning, this book is 16-part cringe and 1 part problematic.
The best character is Quinn, hands down. She's my favorite character. The entire book could have been about her, and I would have been happy.
No!
She's the only person I care about, other than maybe the butler.
I really like Highbridge. But before we get too far into this, let's go to our Judge a Book by its cover segment. The cover has a handsome man standing next to one of the little hay round things, and you can kind of see mountains in the back. I thought this book would be taking place in Texas, and this would be like a cowboy love story.
It kind of is. It's an accurate noise.
It's not much about anything. But what did you think the cover was going to be?
Just judging by the cover and just my general knowledge of cheesy romance novels, I thought it was going to be your classic block of cheese. A country block of cheese that is known as romance. It's not. I would have enjoyed it more if it was cheese.
True.
If it was that nice cheesy layer of romance.
Yeah, and it starts out, the entire setup is super cheesy. He's rich. She's poor. She loves the country life. He doesn't. They're both divorcees. She has problems with her family. He has problems.
He's a divorcee. She's a widower.
True. But all the stereotypes you could think of. He's this, she's that. They shouldn't belong together, but they're so attracted to each other.
That would have been great. Nice big block of cheese.
When you first start reading the book, within the first couple paragraphs, you know what you're in for, which is fine. You just realize either you're really into that type of romance telling or you really enjoy cringe content, which, as someone who is a connoisseur of cringe content, I was down for this.
Yeah, when you first get into it, it's like, okay, I'm gonna be able to laugh through the entire book. No.
Or maybe she'll pull something out, but
no,
it gets so downhill so quickly.
It's just, And
we have a rule on this podcast. We don't talk about the book until we sit down to record the podcast, so we can both form our own opinions of the book separately and come together and really have a good conversation about it. But
oh, it was so hard with this book.
It ended up just us messaging back and forth. We've made a mistake. We've made a mistake. We've made a mistake.
We couldn't even talk about small things because we knew that if we talked about small things, it'd be like, can you believe that this character just did this thing?
Let's start talking about the characters. And by the way, aren't you so glad that she has over 30 named characters? Let's name all of the characters. You know who's my favorite?
Who's your favorite?
Hannah. She apparently is the housemaid for Quinn and Meredith, Rhea's sister and niece.
They have a housemaid? What? When does it say that?
She gets mentioned once. She doesn't appear. She gets mentioned.
No.
When Quinn is running away, she goes into the house and is like, oh, Hannah's not here. Grabs her stuff, leaves. Why did you name this character? Why did you even mention her?
There was no point in this.
But she has over 30 named characters, and most of them either don't appear or only appear once.
In my notes, I only took notes on the people that actually appear more than a couple of times, and so if their name was mentioned, I didn't write the name down until they were mentioned again, or actually appeared in the book, or actually mattered. I really shouldn't have written anything for Nash, and really the only thing I wrote for Nash was a half-brother and only 13 years old.
It makes me so mad. One of the big problems with this book is it's having an identity crisis. It can't tell if it wants to be a Fabio romance novel or if it wants to be a Hallmark movie. And I think this author has confused the concept of a character having a complex and complicated background does not equal a complex and complicated character.
She adds so many random things onto Rhea's backstory as you go along. It's like, oh, her husband died. Okay. Oh, her husband cheated on her. Oh, okay. That's not. Oh, she had a miscarriage. Oh, that's not great. And then you get, I think it's in chapter 16, because that's mostly her doing backstory stuff that I only skimmed.
Oh my gosh. Don't even get me started on chapter 16.
Right. But I feel like there was something else in there that was like, oh, this other horrible thing also happened to her. Oh, wait. No. Yeah. Her husband died in a fire.
You know what really gets people in the mood? 6 pages of talking about the husband you've been talking about for the entirety of the book. That is Rhea's only character trait.
It was 6 I'm so glad you also counted that. I wrote the number of pages that she did backstory on.
That is Rhea's only character trait, is that she is mourning.
I have to stop banging the counter.
I can't even remember his name. I've mentally blocked him out.
Frank. His name is Frank. I only remember his name because it's my dad's name.
She spends all of her chapters doing one thing, talking about her backstory, either with Frank or with her sister Meredith.
Who's a horrible person.
She's not, though. Once you actually meet her, Meredith isn't that crazy.
She's controlling and manipulative.
But she doesn't actually...
To her daughter, at least. She sounds like a horrible person to live under as a teenager.
But that is Rhea's perspective of her, because once she actually shows up, she's pretty reasonable. Which, on a side note, let's talk about that scene real quick. Meredith shows up near the end of the book to talk with Quinn, her daughter, who has run away to live with Rhea for a little while, and Meredith's company is going south and whatever. When she shows up, she doesn't know that Quinn has a dog.
I didn't even. You're right.
She steps out, and Quinn is like, I'm not coming with you unless I can have the dog. And she's like, okay, fine.
She's already found a pet-friendly hotel and everything, too. Like, you didn't know there was a dog. I read this at like 10:30 last night, and so that didn't even register with me.
Not only that, but what kills me is, so she says, yes, you can keep the dog. Half a page later, they replay that exact same scene where Quinn goes, I'm not coming with you unless I can have my dog. And she goes, fine, you can have dog. And then they react to her saying, yeah, you can have the dog. She has to say it twice for Rhea to be like, oh my goodness, she's giving ground. She's trying. She already said yes. Why are we still on this? And then she's like, I found a pet-friendly hotel. I put down a deposit. You didn't know this dog existed. What are you doing?
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't like Meredith until the final scene when she came back and actually was like, I need to actually try to be a mom. But up until that point, I was like, I don't like you. You just don't seem like someone I would ever want to hang out with ever, because it just wouldn't be fun.
Yeah, think about it this way. In our last episode, we talked about Mon Clemens and how he's vilified everywhere. And then when you meet him, he lives up to your expectations. And he's much more complex than you expected. This is the reverse of that. The entire time, Rhea is giving her perspective of what Meredith is like. And then you meet Meredith, and there's this massive mismatch between what Rhea says she's like and what she actually acts like.
Okay, that's fair.
There's a bunch of things. For one, Rhea's always talking about how she always wears white, which is also a little bit of a weird thing. That is Meredith's personality trait, is white, because she has everything in her house is white, and she only wears white clothing, and I don't feel like that's accurate.
Who does that?
I mean, she does show up in white clothing, which is a really weird and unrealistic thing. But the entire time, Meredith is... She lets her have the dog because Quinn put down her first. Like, okay, she wants the dog. And then Meredith's like, Quinn, you need to come with me. We really need to talk about this mother-daughter thing. We need to figure this out. And then that was kind of it. Rhea tries to be friendly with her or whatever, and Meredith still doesn't like her. But honestly, I'm not convinced Rhea is a great person. Someone I would want to get to know.
I question a lot of things about Rhea, especially in the last two chapters. Okay, so if you can't tell, not much happens in the majority of the book, and everything happens in the last two chapters. And it's very squished together, and it's almost like she rushed everything, ran out of time, and was like, I have to get them together right now.
Honestly, most of the book feels like filler.
It really is just filler. If she'd spread out the romance, it probably would have been okay. Actually, it still wouldn't have been okay because the ending is still just not. It's not.
Okay, let's talk about their individual backstories. Rhea's backstory is not necessarily bad. It's the fact that every chapter has at least one time of Rhea going over the same information we have known since the first time she's talked to us.
But also adding something new each time. What new horrible thing has happened to Rhea this chapter in her past?
The entire time she comes across as a victim. Everyone's so mean to Rhea. Everyone does everything bad to Rhea. Nothing good happens to Rhea until she meets Landry. That's what I mean by I don't necessarily think Rhea's a great person, because yeah, her life has been hard, but there's like one line where she admits, yeah, but I was a rich kid and I had friends and a good childhood. Then why are you complaining constantly?
Like, sweetheart, I think you may have depression, and I really think you need to see a counselor. Please, get someone to help you. You need help.
And honestly, it makes Landry not look great, because he gets really happy whenever she's super sad and he can help her. And he thinks it's funny when she's angry at him. And it wouldn't be so bad if these were like individual things, but over the course of the entire book, it comes across a little bit predator-ish.
I didn't mind him until the very end, and then I could rip his off. I really could.
Let's move over to his backstory. His backstory is terrible. Not because the ideas are terrible, but they're not important.
As a whole, it's not a bad backstory. We don't really ever talk about it until we talk about it at the beginning and then we talk about it at the end. But it's not bad. It's a good backstory if it was used at all.
Yeah, it would have been good if it was just Zane, his brother. There's this whole thing with his mom. That's fine. And a thing with his ex-wife. Those three things were set up very good. His dad was a terrible subplot, especially especially considering Zane and Landry have a half-brother named Nash that lives with Zane because his dad signed over custody. You think that's gonna be a big thing, and that's also part of the whole Hallmark Channel thing about this, but we barely ever see Nash. When we do meet his dad, it has nothing to do with Nash. Nash should not exist as a character. He adds nothing to this book except filler. The daddy issues really don't become important until the last 4 chapters, and that's ridiculous.
And he shows up and then causes issues and causes Landry to leave for a little bit, which, oh no, made Rhea worried for half a page because nothing really happens with that. And then his dad leaves and it says goodbye, and Landry's like, oh no, maybe I'll never see him again. And we never really revisit that.
Well, he does, because he says, I left because I thought my heart was gonna give out, but then I wanted to talk to one of my sons again. He doesn't even say if it's Nash or Zane. That's how crazy it is. And he's like, I heard you're getting married, so I'm coming here.
Oh, I didn't really read past the first couple of pages. Not even, I read the first page of the epilogue, and I, skimmed the rest. I couldn't at that point. I was just...
His backstory is bad.
No, see, I don't mind it. He's poor, and he works through college, and he makes a name for himself, and he starts working his way up through a business to get his money. And I like that specifically.
That's what I mean, though. If it has to do with Zane, if it has to do with his mom, if it has to do with his wife, it's well thought out. If it has to do with the dad or Nash, it's terrible.
All right, but anyway, onward.
Talking more about individual characters, I can see how you like Quinn. This author can't write 17-year-olds.
No, she can't.
It is just, to me, Quinn is the most bland, filling a role character.
Oh, for sure. And there are a lot of things that Quinn is allowed to do in the book that I'm like, Aaron's 16. He would not be allowed to do this by himself just because I can't trust him.
She's 17 years old and she gets super excited about a sleepover, which I guess she lived a life where she couldn't really do much with her mom. She could never have a sleepover before, so that's fine.
I forget she's 17 a lot. I feel like she's 10.
Yeah, that's the thing. She either goes between being an absolute child or being way too much of an adult.
Yep.
And she is also one of the people that cries at the drop of a hat and drives me insane. There are so many times where she'd say the most mundane thing and then suddenly have tears in her eyes because Aunt Rhea, I'm so sorry for you. And then 2 paragraphs later be laughing and fine.
It's an emotional roller coaster, man.
That's why I can't care about Quinn, because she clearly fills a role. And also the Meredith Quinn subplot has no good ending.
It didn't really need to happen.
It didn't need to happen at all. Honestly, the one reason I was mad about it...
She could have just sent Quinn to Rhea for the summer, and that could have been the end of that.
Yeah, but Quinn gets introduced in like the 4th, 5th, or 6th chapter. I think it's the 4th. And she basically is just there to be a block for Landry. And that's it.
That's it.
And then she's conveniently invited to a sleepover on the night of Rhea and Landry's date. And then she's conveniently absent for the rest of the book when Meredith shows up. You didn't need to have her. No, she doesn't add to this.
And the only reason Meredith showed up was to conveniently have her there for the wedding.
And to take Quinn somewhere, because we can't have Rhea being an irresponsible adult.
In front of the 17-year-old. Yeah, I like Highbridge.
I like Highbridge. Every single person in here feels like some sort of stereotype.
They all are.
Cleo makes me uncomfortable.
That is Zane and Briley. Zane is Landry's brother, and it's their housekeeper.
There's a weird thing where she gets introduced twice. When you first meet her, it's very odd. I feel like there are a lot of times where this author walked away from the book and then came back and didn't bother to check her notes to see where she is.
There is a paragraph, I wrote down the page number, I swear to goodness I did, where Rhea puts flowers in a vase, and then at the end of the paragraph, not even a paragraph later, there's a sentence, there's a little paragraph about the flowers, and then she puts the flowers in the vase again.
You can see how much care the editors put into this book.
It's so bad.
But Cleo makes me uncomfortable, because Highbridge is a British person stereotype, and it's just, this lady has never met a British person in her life.
Nope.
But Cleo is a black woman. She is plump, she is sassy, she has poor grammar and enunciation. That made me so uncomfortable. She is so obviously...
I mean, respect for being sassy, but
that's the black woman stereotype.
And she's the only black character in the book.
The only black character.
Hello, here is my token black character.
She's also clearly never met a black person in her life. And that Cleo as a concept just made me so uncomfortable.
And she's only at the beginning of the book, and then she's only there to shoot Landry disapproving looks, because I don't think she speaks for the rest of the book other than in the first 2-3 chapters.
And it's just the same stereotypical, uneducated, speaks her mind but doesn't know her place, black woman. And it makes me so mad and uncomfortable, and I hate it.
She could have been a much better character than she was.
It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Also, I don't know why they need housekeepers, either of them. Oh, I have money, I must have a housekeeper. No, you live on a ranch, dude. You don't need a housekeeper.
Landry's house is only half built.
Okay, well, the reason he has that housekeeper is because his ex-wife didn't want him anymore, and he was like, I'll give you a job, it's okay, come with me. And Hembridge was like, yeah, you need someone to watch you, don't you?
Yeah. The scene where Rhea and Landry meet each other, which, by the way, another super great thing in the 6 pages before the awkward hibbity-dibbity in chapter 16 also included how Rhea and Landry met, and it's dumb.
Oh yeah, we don't find out about that until the chapter at the very end. It's the very end.
Yep, chapter 16 and the 6 pages before the hibbity-dibbity, where she decides once again to go over her entire backstory for the 8th time in the book.
Oh, do you know what's sad? There are like 30 characters in this book that have names, and we've already gone over all the important ones that matter that we're going to be talking about, because we're not going to mention anybody else.
Nope.
That's sad.
Nope. It's ridiculous.
All right, but the way they met.
They met at a party, and Rhea was just like, you're too handsome, so I'm gonna hate you now.
Yeah, she talks about that at the beginning too with the cows, when they're like, oh yeah, Landry's gonna come over and fix that. And she's like, I hate him. He's too perfect. He must think so highly of himself. I hate his guts. He's so hot though. And I'm like, you've said hot like 5 times.
It really is. It's too handsome. I think I might fall for you. I hate you.
And then he's like, why don't you like me? And she's like, you're too good looking.
This woman is so emotionally immature.
Go home. Go home.
She has the EQ of a 6-year-old. That is ridiculous. She has no control over her emotions. All she does is stew and what things happen to Rhea. Rhea doesn't do anything. The only thing she did was get drunk.
And Landry's such a dillweed, because at the beginning where he's like, you don't like me, do you? And she's like, no, I don't. You're too hot. He just straight up kisses her. And I'm like, what? Whoa. No.
Well, let's talk about one thing. Rhea makes it very clear throughout the entire book why she's attracted to Landry.
Yeah, he's hot. There's nothing else. He's just hot.
I have no idea why Landry is into Rhea.
She's the damsel in distress permanently and will forever need him to save her, maybe?
Well, he doesn't realize that until...
Or is willing to let him kiss her forever?
There are no explanations given why Landry likes Rhea at any point.
Not even at the end where they're like, I love you too. I know it's only been like 3 days, but I love you.
Which is ridiculous.
No, you've been on one date. You went from hating him, he kissed you, he invited you out on a date. You went on the date, you got very drunk. You went horseback riding the next morning. He got lost and it made you worry. And then he went into a rodeo where he could have potentially died. And that made you lust after him. And suddenly, oh, I love you. Let's get married.
Let's talk about the rodeo subplot. In the beginning of the book.
That could have been something, man. That had potential.
In the beginning of the book, we're introduced to Landry because he gets knocked off a bronc. Zane is sitting there watching him. He knew that Landry was practicing with horses, that he got thrown from 3 of them, and the entire time, Lane is just like cutely making fun of him, like, oh, you did real I don't remember what he says, but he basically sasses him.
And at the end, when he tries to practice again, Zane's like, yeah, don't do this. You're gonna get yourself hurt. And then, like, it doesn't go anywhere. He, like, gets on the horse, and that's where that chapter ends. And it's like, wait, no, Landry has to get hurt here.
But that's the other thing, is Zane is completely cool with this. He knows what he's doing, but then later in the book, Landry's like, hey, I'm gonna go practice, and suddenly Zane was like, no, you can't practice. You could get hurt. You don't know what you're doing. Where were you in the beginning of this book? Where was this you're gonna get hurt at the beginning of the book where Landry gets kicked 3 times?
He didn't care at the beginning of the book because at the beginning of the book, Landry didn't have a girl. But now that Landry has a girl, oh my god, if you get hurt or injured or something, your girlfriend that's not even really your girlfriend's gonna worry, and I can't have that.
It's ridiculous. He completely pulls a 180 on his personality.
And nothing happens there anyway. He says don't do it, Landry does it anyway, and then it ends. And I'm like, wait, something needs to happen here. Either Landry needs to get hurt so we can have a Rhea realizes her feelings for him thing.
Which would have been perfect.
Which would have worked. Or he does great and Zane apologizes for being overly protective, which would have built off of the brother thing.
And they have a heart-to-heart.
Which they've already had brother heart-to-heart. This shouldn't be a thing. This book makes me so mad.
Landry figures out he's in love with Rhea on the date, which, okay, beside the fact I have no idea why you're interested in this woman.
There's no conversation on the date, though. She gets drunk, so slobbering drunk that it just...
Yeah, but it was in the car on the way there. So it was before the date, technically. It was on the way to the date where he decides he's in love with her. Whatever, that makes no sense. Fine.
It's a romance novel. Okay, cool. Sure, you're in love. You think you're in love with her. All right.
Exactly. Yeah, and so it was like one of the moments I looked over and she was, her hair blowing in the wind and her eyes looking outside and she smiled and it's like, okay.
It's a romance novel. I'll give that a pass. I give that a pass.
Yeah, it's like, okay, that's cheesy, that's cute, whatever. Rhea figures out she loves him because Highbridge tells her, hey, he's in the rodeo. She's like, oh no, he could get hurt. As she goes to the rodeo with Highbridge, she runs in, tries to get Landry to stop. Landry's already on his horse. He manages to do the 8 seconds that's required. And then Rhea's like, oh, he could have gotten hurt. Okay, let's do it.
And she's like, nah, let's do it.
Because the entirety of the book, she has the wedding band on from her marriage with Fred. And Landry's like, I'm not going to do anything with you as long as you're still hung up on your ex-husband, which, fair. But for some reason, Landry being in this rodeo, and what boggles my mind is, so he made the 8 seconds, and it's also told somewhere in the book, if he does well enough, he's gonna ride the next day. So he beats the buzzer. They don't wait for his score. But anyone who makes it the entirety of the round is gonna be riding next day. But they completely drop the rodeo subplot as soon as it's, oh, Rhea and Landry can now do whatever they want together because Rhea took off the wedding band. And then it's dumb. It's such a ploy. It's not fleshed out. It doesn't make any sense. He should have gotten hurt. It's very bad.
This character spends so much time talking about her backstory and so many... Someone will look at her and she'll spend a paragraph trying to analyze what that look could possibly mean. But at the end, when he gets off the horse, she just takes off the ring. There should have been at least a paragraph of, and seeing him do this thing, that's when I decided that I could, and this shouldn't have been the trigger for this.
Nope.
At all.
Nope.
But there should have been some forethought of, and that's how I came to terms with myself and decided I could let Frank go.
Which, another thing is, she spends 15 pages over analyzing everything. One thing will happen and you'll have at least a paragraph of Rhea thinking about it from every angle and possibly throwing in backstory stuff.
Which you don't have to read. You can just be like, she's thinking. She's still thinking. We're 2 pages in. She's still up, there's conversation again. All right, here we go.
But for whatever reason, chapters 16 and 17, she suddenly forgets how to think.
Like, nah, we just gonna...
She has no... I went back through, there are no times beside the 6 pages before they do anything.
6 pages, man! She's like, all right, let's do this. And he's like, okay. And so they get back to his place and he's like, I'm covered in dirt. And she's like, well then shower. I'll be waiting for you, right? And start taking her clothes off. But then thanks for 6 pages.
About Frank! Again!
Okay, and also with that scene, right, he comes out and there's all the sexual tension and they're like, we're gonna do the deed. And then he's like, we're either gonna do this and we're gonna be together forever or we're not gonna do this. You as a dude, of all people, should know that when there is sex on the table, you are gonna say whatever to get sex, even if that means that later you're gonna say something else. you're both already mostly naked. You can't just say, let's stop now. I mean, you can. That is a valid thing, but since they both want it, it's kind of like all right, but it's not going to stop now.
Yeah, it's not an I'm comfortable, I don't consent to this anymore. It is literally changing the terms and conditions of this.
It's like, all right, but this is going to be a binding contract. And she's like, I don't care. I want to do this.
Even afterwards, he's like, so forever? And she still seems pretty obviously like, I didn't actually think you meant it. Anyway, so this is the part of the book where Landry becomes a sexual predator.
I hate Landry in this part of the book. Chapter 17 can burn in the deepest parts of hell.
This is the part where we get to talk about where this book goes from cringy to problematic.
I was even okay through chapter 16, really.
Yep.
Chapter 17, I almost threw the book across the room.
Yeah, so this is the part where, I mean, this is 16 parts cringe and 1 part problematic, because there are 17 chapters plus like a 3-page epilogue, whatever.
This book can die.
And in chapter 16, Landry does the whole, if we do this, this means forever. And to me, when I read that, it was, okay, so we're going to be dating now. Fine. And so they do this whole whatever, kind of a side note, not to really go into it, but it was really funny because he does all this stuff for her. And then he gets off once, and he's like, you're so good at this. No, she's not. She didn't do anything.
No, she's not. No, he did all the work there.
But she's so good, quote unquote, because the story demands that our people be in love, whatever. But remember that reading this book, there was only one time he got off. And then they both fell asleep. And then she woke up and he was doing things to her. And at first it's like, oh, he did that to wake her up, whatever. She could have said no, whatever. Then it becomes concerning in chapter 17. So remember, he got off once, they fell asleep, she woke up, he was doing hand stuff, whatever. Chapter 17, they are at the table. First of all, they find out Highbridge was there that night, so Rhea gets all awkward and whatever, and feels really embarrassed. And Landry makes fun of her for feeling embarrassed. Cool.
No, she had every right to be embarrassed.
Yeah, please invalidate her feelings constantly. Which he does. When you look back, that's all he does this entire book, is he invalidates all of her feelings.
He's a horrible person.
And then he was like, I meant it when we said forever. So she's like, well, what does this mean now? And like I said, I thought it meant, oh, we're gonna date for now. And he's like, nope, we're gonna file for a marriage license.
And she's okay with this.
Well, no. She's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, obviously you might be pregnant. Which, first of all, you think she's gonna get pregnant off one time, bruh? No.
Like, excuse you, man.
She's already made it clear that she has fertility issues, and it takes a normal, healthy couple 8 months of trying, on average. So, good try. But then he reveals, she's like, why do you think I'm pregnant? You used a condom. And he's like, I ran out.
And she doesn't get mad at that. That should have been, excuse me, you should have brought that up before this started. That should have been, we don't have condoms.
Well, that's the thing. She says, when did that happen? So that means that first time, he had a condom on. And he said, does it matter?
Yes, it matters.
2 things are there. 1, if you go from using a condom to not using a condom, that changes the terms and conditions of the relationship right there. And you need to clarify that your partner is okay with this, considering things like pregnancy
or STDs.
And 2, it means he did stuff to her, not just hand stuff, but when she was passed out. Because in the book, he only gets off once. And if he ran out, he had to do it at least twice.
Oh, yes, this is normal in a romance novel. This will be okay. Sure. No!
Like I said, Landry turns into a sexual predator.
This book can burn. I was okay with this book until that last chapter. This book can burn.
And instead of being upset, which she's allowed to feel however she wants to feel about all of this, and she feels like she would love to be pregnant. Fine.
Okay, she has every right. She's every right for that. That's her feelings. All right.
But this is so gross because it really does feel like this entire time Landry has been gaslighting her on her emotions. He's been telling her what to feel.
And there's this whole thing where he's like, I'm not going to take advantage of her while she's drunk. I don't want to take advantage of her while she still loves Frank. And then he pulls this. Where was the guy from the middle of the book?
it really does feel like the entire book he's grooming her to do this. Like I said, he gaslights her feelings, he tells her what to feel, he plays the hero anytime he's upset, he doesn't acknowledge when she's upset, because the one time he ran off, she was upset, he went by, he's like, I'm fine, and then left. He just turns into a horrible person. No one should read this book and think, yes, this is the relationship I want to have. It's so bad.
It's so bad. And they get married 3 days later. In the epilogue, they get married 3 days later. They've been on one date. There is only the possibility of a pregnancy.
Yeah, they never confirm whether or not she is pregnant, and I'm gonna bet they're not.
And you wouldn't know after 3 days. I would have waited for a pregnancy test before I decided yes or no on that. I would have been like, no, we're gonna wait and see. You did this thing to me while I was asleep. I don't really think I want to do this, even if I am pregnant.
Yeah, that's the thing. It boggles my mind. And he's like, we need to do it quick or there's going to be a scandal. I'm like, Rhea's already been in scandal. She, in the entire book, she does come across as one of those women who would rather raise her child alone than be with a bad father.
For real. I mean, she took care of Quinn all that time. She's been doing great on her own. She doesn't need you.
And so problematic. And in the epilogue, like you said, they don't confirm whether or not she's pregnant. It's just the wedding, which I love that the only description we get of the dress is that it's light blue and gorgeous. She doesn't even put the work to think of what type of dress she would wear.
She puts all this work in repeating Rhea's backstory over and over again, which if she'd taken out, she would have had more book room for actual story. I can't with this book.
It is gross and bad. And when we bought it, it was 75 cents. Which should have been a warning, but granted, there are a lot of really good books at the secondhand store that are cheaper, and just because they're older, but the fact that this was 75 cents should have been a warning. It was not, and 75 cents was too much for this book. If you want to read this book, please buy it secondhand. Do not support the author or the publishers. Do not support this book or the publishers. This is not...
It was originally $8.99 if you look on the back.
Which, by the way, it's called Big Sky Secrets. What's the secret? There is no secret.
We should have read the bonus story in the back. It might have been better. We're just saying something.
Yeah, there's a bonus story by Michelle Major
that we didn't read.
Because it was just advertising for another author by this publisher, which is the smart tactic. Too bad it's tied to this terrible book.
She's been on the New York Times bestseller list 7 times.
Not for this book.
No.
And that's the thing is, I'm sure she could be a competent writer, but she did not show up for this book whatsoever.
Oh, no. This is a bad book.
So not only are most of the characters cliche or offensive stereotypes, she puts no thought into any of the characters. A lot of the backstory doesn't come to play out. Meredith is a disappointment to meet. Landry's dad is a disappointment to meet.
He's there. He causes some issues. He goes away. Nothing happens.
Nothing happens with him. He could have been completely left out of the book. That would have been fine.
Oh, by the way, I was with your mother when she died, even though you two weren't there. Bye. What?
And there are over 30 named characters, most of which either don't show up or show up for one scene and that is it. And the ending is so rushed and there's so much filler of just Rhea thinking.
It's so bad.
And Rhea does not have a consistent voice. Okay, Landry has a very consistent voice. I think she's also the opposite of the last episode because you can tell it's a woman writing a male.
Yep.
Because he has no complex thoughts or emotions ever.
Yep.
He is very straightforward.
He thinks about his heart-on a lot.
A lot.
Which... I am not a dude. I do not know how much brain power they put towards thinking about a hard-on when they have one. Of course, I assume that it would be a bit difficult to ignore. However, it's surely there are more thoughts than what he thinks in this book.
Yeah. So he doesn't think about, well, I mean, there are a couple of times where he pulls a Rhea, and it's awkward because that's not normally how he is.
Nope.
But at least he's consistent. Rhea has no voice.
She is backstory.
She's backstory, and that is it. She is basically a narrator.
That's it.
She has no voice of her own. And then the entire book, she doesn't show us anything. She tells us anything. Both Rhea and the author.
Yep.
If it's something important, we get told it. We don't get shown anything.
Nope.
And so the entire book feels like filler until the end, and everything is rushed and becomes extremely problematic. And Rhea is a very broken woman who needs counseling and someone to save her from this sexual predator who has just decided Rhea is now his trophy.
Yeah, Zane seems like a normal, rational human being.
So does Briley.
How did he let this happen?
Why did Briley allow this? Because you find out in the beginning, Briley used to not like Landry.
At all. And Briley's friends with Rhea.
But it's like, oh, she softened up once Zane and her got married. And it's like, well, why did she not like...
I'm sure she didn't really soften up. I'm sure it was much of, you're part of the family, I have to be civil.
And it doesn't at all explain why Briley doesn't like him either. It's just, oh, Briley used to not like me. That's not a problem anymore. That's it. This book is bad. And then there's the date scene is literally just Rhea getting drunk. And then the rest of the night is Landry babysitting her.
And then babysitting her the next morning through the hangover and then taking her on a horseback ride. Where he talks about his backstory. That's the only conversation that happens on that horseback ride. It talks about what they talk about, and it's literally just him telling her about his backstory.
This is not a romance book. I don't know what type of book this is, but it's not a romance book because this is not romantic. None of this is romantic.
In the outro for the last episode, I said, let's swim through a romance novel. I should have said, let's slog through this trash.
Oh my goodness.
Alrighty, what are our ending questions that we have for this book?
It's question for the author. Why?
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 Who hurt you? What sort of bad, unhealthy relationship did you go through to think that this was okay?
Well, I know what relationship it is. It's her publisher. This is a rushed job. All of this is terrible. You can tell when she sat the book down and came back to it. She never checks her notes. She never bothers to read through this. This clearly has not been edited properly.
This is a throwaway novel.
This is to fill a slot in her publishing schedule. And maybe, I will not speak for her entire volume of work because this is the only one I've read, but based off of this one, I would never want to read this author ever again. This is absolute trash.
I mean, she may be better than this. This just may be something she threw together just to have something to throw together. She may be good. I don't know. I don't know if I ever want to read another one of her books again, though, after reading this.
But the fact of the matter is, she decided to water down her brand by publishing this book and putting her name as a seal of approval for this novel. And this novel is terrible.
This is not a good book.
It is poorly written, it is badly edited, and it's problematic. I would never want a teenager to read this.
Never. No. In no way is the ending of this book a good example for any teen to read through, because if there's any chance that a teen would think that, oh, this is okay, that's not good, because this isn't okay.
It's not. Landry comes across as a sexual predator who grooms his victim. The last thing, let's talk about the rating. I give this a falling off a Bronco and it's stepping on your head out of 10.
Falling off a Bronco and landing in a pile of cow manure out of 5. Thanks for exploring.
You sound so happy.
Yeah, well, thanks for exploring Big Sky Secrets with us today. Next time, we will be reading through a drama, Big Little Lies, by Leanne Moriarty.
We do want to warn you that the topics of sexual assault and domestic violence come up in this book, so readers' discretion advised. I just feel like I should be constantly apologizing. Oh well. You can keep up to date with us by checking us out on Twitter or Instagram, and you can help support our podcast by checking out our Patreon, where for just $1 a month, you can get our bonus episodes, where we look at a movie adaptation of some of our favorite books. This month we start the Harry Potter series and look at Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. In addition, you can join our Discord server, where we talk all kinds of books from different genres, or you can even take part in deciding what books we cover next. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I'm Sam Reiner.
And I'm Lizzie Sawyer.
And we hope to see you and a friend here next time.